Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in. My name is Nivaal.
And my name is Maryam.
And we are part of the Transform Education Guiding Group. Transform Education is a feminist coalition hosted by Angai working to transform education for gender equality. Today we are celebrating Girls in ICT Day, a day that aims to build and encourage girls and also raise awareness about the gender digital divide, supporting technology education and skills training that allows girls to pursue careers in STEM. This year's theme is connected girls creating brighter futures, and we are so happy to be able to connect today with Farah Alibay. Farah is a systems engineer at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory who has worked on the InSight Mars Cube 1 and Mars 2020 missions. We're so excited to have Farah joining us and are just going to be waiting for her to connect, and then we can get started on this conversation.
Hi.
How are you?
Great, how are you?
We're doing well too. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
We're so excited to be having this conversation today, and we were just discussing with our audience a second ago that the theme here at Transform Education is very much about us as education transformers working to work towards gender equality and rooted in like our logo even has like us launching into space and looking at how we can reimagine feminist galaxies. And so to be able to have this conversation with you is very exciting because you actually work at NASA and you're taking things into space, which is a very unique connection that we've made here. And so we're so honored to be having this discussion with you today. And I guess we can jump right into the question. So can you tell us a little bit more about your journey pursuing a career at NASA and what that looks like and how that experience has been for you?
Yeah, it's definitely not a straight path. It's been quite the journey to get here. So I grew up kind of liking space, but never really imagining myself at NASA. There wasn't really anyone that looked like me or that had the same background, right? And growing up when you saw all the movies and stuff, no one really looked like me, right? It was mostly white men and also growing up, I was pretty good in school and I think when you're young, especially back then, but I think that's still true, when you're a young woman and you were good at school, people never told you, oh, you should become an engineer, you should become an astronaut, you should become a scientist, right? I would get told, well, you should become a doctor or a teacher or, and it's those things where like society never encouraged girls to go into STEM, right? Except from perhaps medicine, was maybe the one exception to that at the time. So it actually took me a while to figure out that this was going to be my path. And in a high school, I finally put two and two together. I thought I wanted to be a doctor, and I was like, wait, I hate biology. I love space and I love physics. Like, what am I doing? And it's still, again, like it still was like, when I told people I want to become an engineer, the reactions that people had was like, really? Like what? Like that, they kind of like didn't encourage it. It just didn't seem like. I had teachers that told me like, well, that's a male dominated field. Like, do you really think you're going to be successful there? So anyway, all that aside, I ended up not listening to them, thankfully, and I ended up going to college for engineering. And then I personally decided to pursue a PhD. It's not required to work in this field. It's just something that I wanted to do. So I ended up at MIT doing that. And then that's when I got my internships at NASA. And that's really what opened doors. And I really generally encourage people when they want to follow a particular field to seek out internships. It is a great way to figure out what you want to do in life. I have done the weirdest internships during my career. I was like at a defense aerospace one year. I worked for Bentley Motors. I worked in India for a microfinance company. I did it all. And finally found NASA and was like, this is where I want to be. So, and I came to JPL, the Jet Propulsion Lab here in Pasadena, when in 2012 when we landed Curiosity on Mars, and I was like, this is so cool. And I just thought the team that was in this was so cool. And so I took it upon myself to basically knock on every single door there was, asking for a job until someone finally gave one to me. And that's how I did this. And I can't tell you, it seems like a straight path, right? But I can't tell you how many internships I applied for that turned me down, and how many of those doors that I knocked on that said no. But eventually, it just takes one yes, and it just takes one person to take a chance on me, and that's what happened. And then I ended up here. And so I've been at JPL since 2014 now. Just over 7 years.
Wow, that's so incredible and so inspiring to hear. And like you mentioned, like sometimes it's not an easy path, and you're not sure, like even at the beginning, like you might not, might not be something that you're planning on ever since you're young, but you know it's something that you can like mold into or learn over time, which is really exciting too. And yeah, it's just so great to hear about your experiences. Yeah, and I think it's really important to have female role models like yourself for other young girls, because then they're able to see themselves in these fields as well. And it's so inspiring that you're able to share your journey and things like that, even on social media, because a lot of girls who see that then are going to be able to recognize that they can do the same thing, or that they can pursue a career in these fields like engineering, or within the space field as well. We also wanted to ask you about how, you know, becoming an astronaut is a dream for so many young girls. So what was it like to work on the Mars 2020 mission, in which you were, yeah, like, and how were you participating in that, or what were you working on specifically? And if you could touch on that, it would be amazing.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been on the Mars 2020 mission for just over 2 years now. This is my second mission to land on Mars, so I've been pretty lucky, in my short career have been able to do 2 Mars landings already. And particularly on 2020, I've had multiple jobs. So one was, on the Perseverance rover. My job, I always say that my job was to make sure that the rover doesn't get lost on Mars, but I do all of the testing for the navigation system on the surface of Mars, because on Mars, you don't have GPS, you don't have Google Maps, so you got to figure out how to orient yourself, how to talk back to Earth. So I did all of the testing and development for that. And now that we're in operations, I have again multiple tasks, but one of them is that I'm the interface between the Perseverance rover and the helicopter Ingenuity that just flew for the first time a few days ago. I actually flew for the second time just this morning. And so I've been heavily involved in the coordination that has to happen between the rover and the helicopter to make this mission happen. But big picture, what I find really, really interesting about working on these Mars missions is, like many people, I've dreamt to be an astronaut my whole life, and obviously I'm not there yet, maybe one day, but the big thing for me is that I get to be an explorer through the eyes of and the ears of that rover, because we have a microphone, right? And that is just incredible. Like, I get to live on Mars, but through the comfort of my own home, and that has been an amazing journey. I mean, it's hard, especially because we're working on Mars time, which is a little bit different than Earth. Our days are a little bit longer, and we work at night a lot. But it's just extraordinary. Like, often in the morning when we get images from Mars, I'm one of the first people to see that particular part of Mars that day, and then it's like, are you kidding me? Like, I get to do that, and so I certainly enjoy it a lot.
Wow, that sounds so awesome. And I guess, like, going off of that as well, have you had any experiences of the gender gap from your own education and career in STEM? Like, you mentioned a little bit at the beginning about, your experience with teachers telling you like not to go into these male-dominated fields, but were there other experiences that really stand out to you and demonstrate this sort of like gender gap that we see in fields like this, or non-traditional careers as they're called?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so when I started, even in college, there were only about 20 to 25% women, and in women of color is even less, right? And so as soon as you enter more than one minority, it's kind of like it's over. There's not going to be anyone that looks like you. And that's been true my entire life. And now at JPL, we're about 25% women in technical fields and about 25% minorities. But again, put those two together, and women of color is again a pretty low number. And so why is that important, right? Like, why do we talk about that? Why does it matter? Well, again, one is it's about representation, and so that the importance of seeing yourself in a particular job. So you at least have to get through that door of making the decision to make it there. And then if you at least got that far, and now you're in a position where you're like, yeah, I'm gonna pursue that field, then you're like, okay, well, I'm surrounded by people who don't look like me. There's no one in my management chain that looks like me. How do I, and it can be difficult to progress. It can be difficult, different people with different backgrounds will have different ways of approaching things. It can also be intimidating. It's definitely been something that I've experienced. I think one of the positive sides of this is that we never used to think to talk about these things, and now we do, right? And so,
Mhm.
and I think that's a step in the just the past 7 years. Like, I remember when I started my career not that long ago, and I brought up these issues of diversity and inclusion, I was shot down so many times. I was told, "Oh, what are you talking about? Like, we're doing fine. Sexism doesn't exist anymore." And it's like, no, it does, because I
Yeah.
live it every day. You
Yeah.
just don't know because you don't live it.
Yeah.
So, I think we're doing better, but we certainly, our workforce in STEM is definitely not representative, right? And so, and I think that's the big thing that we need to change and improve on, because we all know that diverse and inclusive teams lead to better solution solving, lead to better teams, right? If you can come to work and present yourself as you are and feel comfortable in the environment that you're in,
Mhm.
feel that you're in an inclusive environment, that totally, then you don't have to spend your time worrying about that. You can spend your time worrying about technical problems and about thriving in that environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so important as well, like making sure that even when, as you were mentioning, like if people can't recognize like the barriers that exist or things that you're facing, like being able to stand up for that anyways, because and also just recognizing that there is an issue. I think that's also sometimes hard, especially because if you feel like you're the only one who's going through something, or like is this like something that is like maybe it's just a part of this career, right? But not accepting that and standing up for changes to be created. I think that's really, really important, and it's so brave of you to be able to step up in those spaces as well, especially when others might not have experienced that, or even said that like it's like as you were mentioning that like, oh, it doesn't even exist. And so that's really, it takes a lot of bravery to be able to step up and just like raise awareness about these things, and also I guess challenge these systems that exist and have been existing for so long. We also wanted to ask you, how would your industry in particular benefit from more girls and women participating? I know you touched on this a little bit just now, but if you could expand on that, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like, the more women you have in this field, the more women you will get, and the more representative your population is going to be. And so, and the main thing is, if you're going to hire the best of the best and to do the most complex things you're ever going to do, why shut out half of your population? Why wouldn't you want to encourage your entire population to at least consider those jobs in those fields, right? And by not encouraging women from a young age, and it's been shown, right, that like usually girls lose interest in STEM, in their early teens, if not earlier. And so by not putting in the effort early to get women interested, you are essentially shutting them out from your workforce. And so that you're not setting yourself up for success if you want to do the complex things, if you want to do the incredible things. And to me, that's what's important, right? And then we talked a little bit about the importance of diversity. When you're working, especially when you're working in STEM, when you're looking at really complex problems, the last thing I want on my team is 7 people who are going to agree with everything I say, right? Like,
Yeah.
because that's not useful. I can do
Yeah.
that myself. I can agree with myself, right? Like, I can come up with my own ideas.
Yeah.
But if you then put people in a room that have different backgrounds, different experiences, right? Not just women, but people, of all walks of life who have who have whatever different background they have or abilities, that's when you thrive on that diversity, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's when you're saying like, yeah, okay, you have a different way of looking at that same problem. You're going to approach it a different way and come up with a different solution, or view, and that's how we come up with creative solutions. That's
Yeah.
how we come up with more complete solutions. And that's the value of it all, really.
I think that's so, so important, especially when we're, like you mentioned, like looking at these complex problems. It's important for us to have these different perspectives, because if you're having, like the same people like approaching a problem and they're not able to figure it out, for example, you need like that additional view on things, or someone who's coming in with a different perspective, because they might look at the problem differently and come up with a better solution. And so I think that's important, not only in like systems engineering and aerospace engineering, for example, but like other fields as well. And I think this applies across the board, and it just goes to show the importance of diversity and inclusion, so that we can solve these complex problems that face our world and also come up with better solutions. So I think that's very, very important. And, you know, girls are underrepresented in STEM overall, but there are so many inspirational role models like yourself who are leading the way and showing girls that it's possible for them to realize their dreams in whatever career they want to pursue. And so we wanted to ask you as well, who inspired you growing up, and how can we help inspire more girls to pursue STEM subjects and careers?
So I think for me, it was the women astronauts that started coming up, when I was growing up, right? So the Sally Rides and the Julie Payettes in my case, and the Mae Jamesons of this world, right? Those are the women that inspired me, and they, to be clear, like they paved the way for people like me, right? Like especially back then, if you look at the 80s and 90s when women were just coming up in aerospace, they first off, they were the first people that I saw in this field that I was like, oh, okay, like she really looked like me. Like that's a start, maybe I can belong here too.
Yeah.
And then, but they also had to deal with a lot of the systemic problems that appear when you don't have minorities in a certain world. And they certainly, I always say that I stand on the shoulders of giants in terms of what I'm doing in my field, because without these women, I wouldn't be here today. So I think those are the women, and it's funny because now, as I progress in my field, and I've learned a lot about, the women, for example, at JPL that have been here for 30, 40 years, right, who started their careers back then, and learn about their journey. It's like they're becoming my heroes, because again, right, they're the ones that paved the way, that made things better, and they've given me my own mission, right, in a way of like of seeing those women in my field pave the way. It's given me sort of the energy and the strength to say, like, no, I have to do the same for the next generation, because that's the only way we're going to keep improving.
Yeah.
So I think for me that, yeah, those were the women, the ones I knew and the ones I didn't know of, that paved the way before me.
That's amazing, and we're so happy that you're able to do the same for so many other girls. And it's like it's so inspiring when women not only like support each other, but also just like, I think sometimes on a lot of careers where women don't don't have a lot of jobs, or like are not represented, then having that one woman can make all the difference for like a young girl like yourself, as you were mentioning, that's looking to be a part of that as well. And I think this is a common theme that has come up throughout this conversation, but we're sure that like a lot of girls who are watching this right now, but including ourselves, are so inspired by you and everything that you're doing within this field, not only for women and girls who are interested in STEM, but just girls who want to pursue non-traditional careers and aren't necessarily sure if they're going to succeed. I think your journey just really is a testament to what can happen if you're staying true to yourself and really pursuing the things that you care about. So it's just so inspiring. And we also wanted to ask you, what will it take to close the gender gap in STEM and digital skills, so that like all the next generation of girls who we've been discussing about throughout this conversation as well, become like technology solution makers and shapers?
So I think we've started along that path, right? Like the first thing that we need to do is recognize that there's a societal bias, right? And I think we've talked a little bit about that. Let's recognize that we are treating girls differently, and that they're not being given the same opportunities, even at a young age, right? We still have those stereotypes. So that's number one. And now that we've started recognizing that problem, I think intervention, like coming into schools at a young age, normalizing STEM for girls, providing resources, and providing a safe space also for girls is really important. I mean, one thing that personally really helped me in my life is that I, in high school, went to an all-girls school. And for me personally, even though I thought that was weird when I moved to England, I was like, what do you mean an all-girls school? But it really helped me because it allowed me to be myself, to have a place where I could be as nerdy as I wanted to be. And, there were 4 of us in our physics class, but it really helped me. But all that to say that, like, I think one of the things is that, like, girls still have that pressure, right, of being a certain way in middle school, in high school, and they sometimes divert away from STEM fields because of those pressures. So I think having dedicated, we started seeing that, right? Girls who code and those kinds of things, like making STEM cool and accessible and providing resources, and that's got to be worldwide, right? To women is the way to start. And like I said, it needs to start at a young age, right?
Absolutely.
We need to start seeing girls in, you know, in comic books, in movies, in on TV, in books, and those need to be available for 5, 6 year olds, right? Like we
Yeah.
look at TV shows, for example, in science TV shows, and when I was growing up, right, it was like, okay, it was Neil deGrasse Tyson, you know, all the Cosmos series, and Carl Sagan, and Bill Nye, all men, right? And there
Yeah.
was no women in TV, for example, right? So I think it's about representation. It's about reaching out at a young age so that those girls don't drop out, and then maintaining that workforce, right? So
Yeah.
it seems weird to talk about kids as a workforce, but like maintaining kids interested, right? And it's true, you know, speaking of workforce, we see a drop in women in STEM as you go through. Like women are more likely to leave STEM as well. So it's not just about getting them interested, it's about keeping them in that field, and then providing accommodation for women, right? Like, you know, it's difficult in certain fields to have children, to support a home at the same time. So I think we need to revisit every age and every area, and make it more accessible, make it and normalize it, so that kids stay interested. Because I can tell you, every 5 year old likes a cool experiment. They all do.
Yeah.
But somewhere along the way, they lose that interest, right? And that's what we have to catch.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that was such a great way to end off the interview. Thank you so much for everything today, and for joining us, and for all of your like inspiring words and insights. Congratulations on everything that you're doing. We wish you all the best with the amazing work that you're doing right now at NASA as well. And I guess, like, just before we end off, is there anything else you'd like to add, or a final message you'd like to send our viewers who are joining us today?
I mean, I think we've covered a lot. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I think, you know, the general message, I think I talked about it, is, you know, it's whatever, you know, STEM field, or whatever field you choose to pursue, for those kids out there, it's never going to be an easy journey. And unfortunately, there is no easy solution to that. But one thing I hope that my story tells you or shows you is that if you don't give up and you pick yourself back up, you know, that you will get to that dream job. And then if any of you are in that dream job and have made it, please give back to your community. Take the time, because, you know, to me, it's like it only takes one kid changing their mind about that field, right? Like one conversation that you have that changed someone's mind, and you've probably changed someone's life. So if you are listening and you are in one of those fields, take the time to reach out. Doesn't matter what you look like. Doesn't matter, and just go out and reach out to your community, and help, you know, and be a good ally.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. I think that's a really great way to end off. And thank you to everyone sending their kind messages right now, just as we close off. We will be sharing this interview afterwards as well. But again, wishing you all the best with the awesome work that you're doing. You truly are an inspiration to a lot of people, including ourselves. So yeah, keep up the great work, and take care.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Bye. Bye.